Science Course Cryptozoology podcast. Today we're sitting down with Laurie Notch, who is a professor of anthropology among many other studies at a university in Maine. She's had a lot of paranormal experiences over her lifetime, but she's also dipped her fingers into the cryptozoological, and in that field, she's had a few experiences of her own that are quite interesting. And it's really a pleasure to have her on today. If you want, we can just start off with you talking a bit about your career currently. I understand that you work at, sorry if I get this wrong, Southern Maine University or something along those lines?
It's Southern Maine Community College,
Okay.
and I'm a professor of anthropology and sociology, and sometimes U.S. history, English lit, English composition, and French.
That is a wide variety of careers you got there.
Yes, absolutely.
How did you come to get those careers exactly?
Well, many years of education, 4 superlative degrees.
Hmm.
I just finished another master's degree last year, and
Wow.
at University of Southern Maine. Yeah, it's a good question. Not just wow, but why. But anyway, I guess keeps you active,
I was
and
gonna say I'd rather do that than not do anything.
it's correct. So, no,
Uh,
I've been teaching for God knows almost 4 decades. I'm pretty old, so
wow. 4
we're up
decades.
there. We're up there. Yeah, it's
Hmm.
about going on. Yes. So I don't know. As an anthropologist, I've traveled all over the world and worked in many cultures and conducted many kinds of studies. And I get very fascinated with local belief systems and folklore. It's just par for the course when you're living in some of these societies.
Hmm.
And I've had my own very strange experiences
Well, it
throughout
was one of
my
your experiences
travel.
that led me to contact you.
Yes, and I don't know how are you connected with Nate Brislin?
Nate and I met around 2.5 years ago, or sorry,
Yes.
1.5 years ago, and we've been just best friends ever since.
Oh, that's great. And you
Yeah.
guys seem to share the same passion for cryptids.
Oh, absolutely. We've lived eerily similar lives. It's been a
Wow.
strange history that we've had.
No, that's great. And I love Nate. He was in my class, and I've been trying to get him on a couple of my ghost hunting ventures, but it's always a schedule conflict. I know he wants to go.
Hmm.
We have a site up here in Sabattis, Maine, where there's been UFO and paranormal at the same time on this property.
Hmm.
So he's kind of interested in that. And I said, yeah, it's a real interesting case. And I've been up there with a couple of groups doing investigations. And I'm trying to get him up to this place so he can see for himself and put together something if he wants. And
Hmm.
it's a really interesting location. And again, the homeowner, she's just had all kinds of strange phenomenon, and some of the groups that have been up there have caught some interesting phenomenon on up there on
Hmm.
their cameras and whatever recording devices, and so yeah, it's just fascinating that there's all this kind of activity that goes on and people report it. And see, I just say, human beings report this kind of stuff everywhere on the planet. Every
Right.
culture I've lived in, there's a belief in either a cryptid type creature or something that's just beyond the realm of nature. And it's not so much that, that they are mistaking a bear or a bird or something for this strange phenomenon. They know their environments really well, and there's definitely I will put a lot of faith in what they say about stuff that they're perceiving that just doesn't fit the norm.
Hmm.
And I think you need to take those reports quite seriously. And that's my philosophy.
Right. Well, definitely you seem to take your philosophy very seriously as well. Um,
Yes, I hope so. But anyway,
what is it that sort of led you into those fields of study? Was it anthropology or was it some experience you had? What kind of led you to that point?
I, I've had I've had strange experiences since childhood, and I have lived, and I was raised. You have to understand, I was raised in a very rational, science-minded, family.
Hmm.
There was always understand the laws of physics kind of thing. And I did. I studied physics for a long time as well, all the way through university, almost minored in it. So,
Hmm.
I understand the natural world pretty well. And I'm always looking for the best explanation. What's the simplest and best explanation for everything? But I have to say, and the many interesting and maybe sometimes bizarre locations where I've been, there have been phenomena that just defy all rationality. In fact, I think even with my own father, who was a pilot, and by the way, he and I would witness some very strange things, and try to analyze it, but we wouldn't be able to come up with any kind of logical explanation. So I just guess I would say there's stuff that happens that we just don't have a handle on. We can't. You can try and rationalize. You can try to explain it 6 ways to Sunday with some natural force, but it just doesn't fit that mold. And I've experienced quite a few things in my lifetime. So I guess that combined with the fact that I sort of got into anthropology by accident.
Hmm.
But the anthropology, excuse me, I don't know what these notifications are coming up, or I'm gonna wish I could turn them off. That's gonna mess us up if I go in there.
Right.
Let me just see if I can get in. I'm talking to you at the same time. I'm trying to figure out this laptop. So yeah, I've had experiences and I can't explain them, and I'm definitely naturally curious. Just as I imagine you and Nate are naturally curious, and other people who explore, these things professionally. We want to know, what is it? What's making it happen, and what look at the belief systems about it. What can we do to maybe give a better understanding? I don't know if we can ever come up with evidence. If we did, I mean, how would you feel about that if they actually found the explanation for maybe a Bigfoot sighting? If they actually pegged that down for certain, how would you feel about that?
I mean, that would
I'm
be.
asking you. Go
Ugh.
ahead.
I don't
Mhm.
know how I'd react to that. I'm definitely an individual who believes the phenomenon is likely to be something actual. Um,
Yes.
but it would be amazing if tomorrow, like, they came out and said, "Okay, we found a carcass in the woods" or something like that.
Right.
I wouldn't. I'm not sure if I'd know how to feel about that. I'd probably scream. I would.
Yeah. Yeah. It would be a huge. It would be a huge shock, I think. But would that take away the mystery? Would that end the search? Or would that open up new doors of inquiry?
Right. I certainly think that there is a lot of people, including myself, who have thought about that. We're all trying to sort of at least validate the search for these things. Um, and we never often stop to consider what happens if we actually find one. Um,
Right.
and I've definitely given that some consideration. And I think that I would at least find some personal solace in the ability to now far more directly observe these things. And I'm sure that figuring them out totally would take the rest of my life.
Yeah. And many people have devoted their entire lives, their lifetimes to pursuing it,
Hmm.
and trying to find any evidence of anything. But it is curious. I mean, as an anthropologist, this is part of the human condition. What these sightings, these descriptions of whatever, if they're creatures or if they're phantoms or whatever the phenomena, or UFOs even. It's humans who are perceiving it and recording it. There are just too many reports that you can't so easily dismiss any of this.
Hmm.
Granted, there are a lot of fakers and there are a lot of hoaxes, and you have
Right.
to weed through all that. But there are too many that I think are quite legitimate, and the people are very, very sincere
Hmm.
in what they believe. And yeah, it deserves investigation. Whether or not we'll ever find out what it is, or maybe are we even meant to? I don't know. So, but yeah, again, I've in my book long, as they say in Africa, my book long life, I encountered quite a few strange things. And, and I have to say, as a child, when you're witnessing this stuff, you're a child, your
Right.
perceptions aren't, you don't know what you're misconstruing. You're just basically reacting to whatever the event was. And all I can do is say for the various incidents that I've had since I was a child, I can say that I always kept a scientific mentality about it. It was never an overreaction, like, maybe there was a little bit of, oh my God, but I would say, okay, let's think about this empirically. I did that from the age of 7.
Right,
And
right.
can I get witnesses? Can I get this to repeat itself? I always remember trying to do that. And a lot of times I'd be successful. And then I'd learn, ooh, it wasn't just me.
Right, right.
So that was a method I've always followed.
Along those
And
lines,
yes,
what are some of the strangest experiences that you've had in your life?
well, the one I was posting about was, and I can't say definitively that this was a Jersey Devil incident, but that's what people in the neighborhood were speculating at the time. And it was in the late 60s, I don't know, 68 or 69. I was living in Lakehurst, New Jersey. That town, when I lived there, there were lots of strange things that went on. And I lived in a really, I'm just going to call it the poltergeist house from hell. That was another
Hmm.
strange event. I mean, we were literally, we did leave that house in the middle of the night and
Wow.
left everything and left. And my father drove us all the way to Minnesota, you
Oof.
know, and he would never talk about it.
Hmm. Yeah,
And so,
that's a far way away, that's for sure.
yeah, it was, well, that's where that's where my parents are from. I mean, they were Minnesotans and I guess his life was falling apart and
Hmm.
he wanted to go back. But there was something that was very serious. And he's like, get in the car, we're leaving. Never knew why. Never ever. He's dead now. My parents, everyone's pretty well dead except me.
Hmm.
um, Never knew why that went on. But that house had a lot of very disturbing things going on. I had friends, you know, I was in middle school and none of my friends wanted to come to play because it was too creepy a house. It was, geez, scary. It was scary. Doors would fly open and shut by themselves. Every door in the house at the same time would start opening and slamming simultaneously.
Hmm.
This is in broad daylight. It's not even in the middle of the night. There was always activity in that house. Never could figure it out. Again, tried to analyze it from a scientific point of view. There was a lot of denial about it. Even my parents didn't want to address it. Um, it was scary. It was a very scary house. But yeah, at the time I had a lot of witnesses. Sadly, I'm not in touch with those people anymore. They're all gone. Although I did see that on some paranormal show, a girl named Bonnie Bates, a woman, she's a woman like me now, but her name was Bonnie Bates, and she was with some New Jersey paranormal group. And I never did find out if she's the same Bonnie Bates who lived like right down the street from me. Um,
Interesting.
yeah, that is strange. Same name, and I tried looking up the group. Maybe if you want to do that research, be my
Hmm.
guest. But I'm not sure if she's the same one that lived in Lakehurst, New Jersey. But that house had a lot of weird things going on inside of it. Then there was the evening where I had just gone to bed. I believe it was a school night, probably early, right when school was starting up again, maybe late summer.
Hmm.
And it was, because I remember it was a warm night. It wasn't, you could wear short sleeves. And I had gone to bed, and believe it or not, let's say I had my Sheltie dog, I had one of the Siamese cats, and I had a pet raccoon.
Oh wow,
And
my neighbors have a pet raccoon back in the town I used to live in. That's
yeah,
funny.
well, I had a pet raccoon, and raccoon, we just crawled in the bed, and the raccoon, he would sleep at the top of my bed, massage my head at night, and we were wakened. I mean, I don't even believe I had fallen asleep yet. I
Hmm.
just gotten into bed around 10 at night, and we hear this scraping. I mean, it was very distinct, and it wasn't like a scratch, scratch, scratch. It was like a, really a prolonged scraping noise, quite distinct. And I flew up and went out. My parents were out. I think my sister, we all were jumped out. We went out into the yard. There was every neighbor in the neighborhood. Lights were on. Everybody was standing outside looking at the sky and looking around. And then everyone was like, "What was that? What was that?" It had hit every house on our block as far as I could see, and we did see these scratch marks. The next day, there were like these claw marks that had gone right into the paint of the house, and it was on every house. So all I can say is nobody. I remember, of course, next day you're talking about it. And everybody is saying, well, maybe it's a Jersey Devil that had just done this weird thing. Because I was thinking, well, were there a bunch of kids that had sticks? This is how I'm thinking. A bunch of kids who had sticks and were going around and, you know what I mean, and scraping up the siding of the homes with it. But it didn't fit logically. It hit every house on the block. And just, again, look, it was something out of the Twilight Zone. Here, look at everybody coming out and staring up at the sky, looking around, what the heck could it be? And I just remember hearing somebody make the comment, well, it's a Jersey Devil. Again, I don't recall any footprints or weird things like that, but it was a very strange night. And I often heard stories, Jersey Devil stories when I lived there. Some guy's father or uncle in a fishing boat that got attacked, and I think I vaguely remember in some local print that they'd have stories of like hunters and fishermen going off in the Pine Barrens getting attacked, but I didn't know any of them personally. Just be stuff that was reported. But yeah, Lakehurst had a lot of strange phenomenon, and like I told you, we left, packed up and left. Like I say, as a child, you encounter these things, and you don't really have, at the age of 12, 13, or even younger, you don't have that part of the brain that's fully formed yet, to think super rationally. But because I'd been trained at a young age to think that way, I was already trying to think logically, what could explain this. But I tried to ask neighbors, what do you think it was? And, I went out and did my due diligence. But the evidence was there. That was the freaky thing. Like, I don't know how many houses I looked at, but they were all clawed. They were all marked up. And it was at the same time. So I don't know how to explain it.
So when you said that the claw marks have been made at the same time, I actually meant to ask you this. For about how long did the clawing sound go on? Because for something to claw at each of the houses, you'd think that would take at least a couple of minutes.
Yeah, wasn't that long, but it was like you hear this, just, I don't know, maybe it was a couple of minutes. It could have been a minute, but it was not a scratching like a sporadic scratching. It was one big long scrape. And it just got your attention. And again, everybody flew out of the house. Everybody. Right. And I could understand if it was just my parents and me, because, okay, what kid is vandalizing? What's that on do? Who's doing that to our house, kind of thing. That's exactly the reaction. But it was everybody, and I mean, I still have it. See the picture in my mind of all the lights on that block coming on, and everybody coming out at the same time, reporting the same thing.
Right.
And then the next day in daylight, we went. I looked at my neighbors, the Cummings. I looked at my other neighbors. I think their name was Ward. All the houses had this big, at least one or two. Like I can't say it was like everybody wants to think in three claw marks. It wasn't that, but it was at least one or two like big scrape marks on just one side of the house. But it went on for the scrape marks were at least a yard long, or at least. But it was distinct. It was very distinct, and it was very, very puzzling. But again, everybody at the time, people speculated, oh, it was a Jersey Devil. I think you blamed everything on the Jersey Devil back then. And Lakehurst itself has got a reputation as being kind of a haunted town, because of the Hindenburg, and there's a history there. And
Mm,
I don't know what explains the poltergeist activity that happened in our particular home. Um, Nobody else's house was doing that, but ours was.
right.
I don't really know the history of that house. I really never researched. I remember the address, and I think I went back to see it in the 1980s. I just drove by to see if the house was still there. That was in 1981. We left in 1970. So, it was 11 years later. I just happened to be out in the East Coast and went back to Lakehurst to look at the old neighborhood, and it looked like it was still there. And
Hmm.
I mean, I didn't bother to go knock on the door and say, "Hey, is your house haunted?"
Right,
But it
right.
was a very violent house. Violent.
Now, I do want to ask you about that, but I just have two more
Yeah.
questions about
Yeah,
the possible Jersey
sure.
Devil experience.
Right.
You mentioned when you first said it in the show that a few people, or at least some people, when they came out of the house to see what was going on, a few of them were looking up into the sky. Did anyone say that they had
Yeah.
seen anything there, or?
No, but they were looking.
Hmm.
They were looking. I do remember Mr. Cummings, the father, my neighbor, my playmates, Barbara and, gosh, what was her sister's name? I remember Barbara. Barbara and Mary Cummings. Yeah, I remember their names.
Hmm.
He was particularly looking up there, and why, I don't know, but it was like looking at the sky, looking around. I don't know why they would do that,
Hmm.
but I can see him in my mind's eye. I see him very clearly
Right.
standing in the yard, and like, what the hell was that? you know.
Well,
Um,
obviously, very confused about the whole thing. Um,
yeah, yeah, it was a weird night.
did that town or even that neighborhood ever have any other experiences that were sort of not just
Well,
chalked up to the Jersey Devil, but like sort of specific to the Jersey Devil?
yes, I don't know about that. Again, I would hear stories from my classmates that, and I do recall vaguely maybe something appearing in some local, print that I don't even know if exists anymore. But I heard stories of somebody's uncle or going fishing and getting attacked by the Jersey Devil.
Hmm.
There were lakes. I mean, granted, we're not far from the Pine Barrens, and we had a lake near us, Lake Horicon or something. And I'm not even sure if that's where they would be going to go fishing, but we had rivers and we had lakes, and people go fishing, or I guess they go hunting in the Pine Barrens. And but I'd hear stories from my classmates. Oh, my uncle or so and so's uncle was with his friend on a boat, and the Jersey Devil attacked them. And I would hear these kinds of stories. That's how I learned about the Jersey Devil. It's just hearing. I didn't know anything about the history of the Jersey Devil until, fairly recently. I never knew as a kid what's the story behind it. I just knew that I heard rumors and stories of Jersey Devil attacks.
Right.
I can't even sightings. I mean, these are reports of people being attacked. And it was kind of popular. It was a great urban legend for us. And remember, I'm 12 years old,
Hmm.
and so you're what's the word I want to say? You're taking the bait on that stuff.
Ah, right,
You're
right.
you're a 12-year-old kid. It's just like, ooh, creepy and far out and
Right, right.
strange. But I would hear stories. Again, I never saw anything like that myself. I never, you know, I mean, even though I did a lot of snooping around, I was always illegally in the cranberry bogs on military property. I was always looking for turtles.
Hmm.
And you'd think I'd find something weird. I never did.
Huh.
I'd go catch turtles and frogs and try not to get picked up by the MPs.
Right, right.
So did a
In
lot of duck and cover in the culverts.
in
So
in doing your
yeah,
research on the Jersey
strange
Devil,
cranberry bog monsters. I don't know.
in doing your research recently
Yeah.
on the Jersey Devil history, what have you found that you would consider either like significant or interesting?
Well, I was reading more about it. Of course, I've watched a lot of History Channel, and I've read about it in the past, more. But I guess what is intriguing to me is maybe the cultural roots for it,
Mm.
for what this creature is. It was, you have to understand it. I think it stemmed out of the birth of a kind of an unwanted child by the Leeds family. They had a lot of kids, and
Right.
they she didn't want to have the 13th one, and it came out rather misshapen or something. And there are lots of other, um, there were superstitious beliefs. We're looking at 1735 or something. Yeah, right. It's before the Revolution. So
Mm-hmm.
New Jersey was still a colony for the crown. But there was, in the history there were some Quaker settlements that people didn't really like. That Quakers were up against the Anglicans, and there was also a lot of anti-British sentiment starting, and there was conflict about that. And apparently, the Leeds, that family, they were loyalists, and he a publisher too. He did something, and he rivaled Ben Franklin for
Yes, I know
for
this
public.
story well. Yeah.
So to me, the things the mud they would sling at each other, let's just say, um, and in those days, what would it be? It would be, beliefs and things that were not godly, and satanic, and no, it's one thing to just vilify the other guy, by hurling devil invectives at them, and there was a lot of, the belief systems were very steeped in those classic visions of the devil and demonic activity.
Mm-hmm.
It was kind of par for the course. And you have to look at the Pine Barrens. I don't know if you've ever been there. Have you ever been down there
I have not,
in the
unfortunately.
Pine?
Nate's father has, though, actually.
Who is Nate's dad has?
Yeah,
Yeah,
he
and I
has.
was down there, not, let's see, it was maybe 2008 or something. I was taking a trip. I drove through there, and I went through it just to say, ooh, let me go see what this is like again. And it's a beautiful, interesting forested area, and it's sandy. It's not like it's near the water, but it's very sandy soil and a lot of pine trees. But there is a kind of a desolate feeling in it,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not overly populated. Well, I don't know, not yet, but there's still areas that are protected. They're preserves, they're wildlife preserves, and there are natural fauna in there. So, and I do know it's an area where, you know people who aren't trying to hide from the law and whatever, they go sneak around in there, and there's probably some bodies from the mafia in there. There's lots of, it's a big area.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess there's a vibe to it. I've never felt, when I've been in there, I've never felt primarily spooked or threatened by anything.
Right.
Maybe I just be looking at what creepy people might be in there.
Right.
But I never felt an eerie. In fact, I felt kind of nice. It felt kind of nice and comforting and calm. It's a very calm place.
Hmm.
So, and I've never been to the site of what's left of the Leeds home. There's not much left. I think a chimney or something. I've never been to that site myself, but heard about it. So yeah, it's worth. I know that there are investigators that go into the Barrens and they try to do paranormal, whatever investigations of the property, and they try to come up with something. I don't think anybody really has, but again, there have been reports, and some of them documented, where something's jumped on the roof of a house and left hoof prints, and
I've been trying to follow that
there have been these
particular
kind of
case, actually, yes.
right, and you're seeing that people will hear it like it's on the house. It's doing something on the house.
Mm-hmm.
And so, to me, if something had come through and clawed our homes, well, that kind of fits the MO in a way, maybe differently. I don't recall if there was anything on the roof. I just remember hearing the noise on the outside of the house, on the side of the house.
Right.
But it was striking enough that it got us out, and it got everybody out. that's what's so uncanny to me.
Hmm.
Everybody came out of their homes.
Right.
So what it was, and I tried to find if there was any print story on it. Did anybody report it? I can't find anything. So it would have to have been in, I'd say in 68 or 69, somewhere. I somehow remember it was 69, but it was somewhere in there.
Hmm.
And but yeah, there were other weird things that happened in Lakehurst. There was another night. It was a summer night, and I was up late. It was a night, one of those nights where I'm up watching the creature feature movie. The double feature, Gila monster and whatever, or
Ah, yeah, yeah.
tarantula, whatever. Those Friday night movies. That was my ritual as a kid. So, but I remember my mother and I. It was, oh God, it was late. It was like 2 in the morning. My father was not home. He might have been out. He was military, so he might have been out on maneuvers or something. But my mother and I, she was up, and it was late, and we heard like an alarm going off, like an old style bell alarm, not one of those sirens, but like a bell, like if an old style alarm, like a burglar alarm,
Mm.
bell just going off, and we weren't very far from the center of town, maybe 4 blocks or 5 blocks, and we heard this bell going off from downtown. My mother and I we stood on the stoop of our front door, and literally, this is the other freaky thing. We're seeing all our neighbors like walking like zombies down the street. They were oblivious to us. I think my mother tried to ask one of them what's going on. They didn't even acknowledge us. It was like they were in a trance, and they were all walking down the street toward that bell, the sound of that bell. We're talking, I don't know, 20 some people, maybe more. I don't know. The street, they were just people we knew walking like in a trance down that street. And then the bell stopped, and they all turned around and just trance-like walked back. Nobody acknowledged us. Nobody
Hmm.
said anything. Nobody looked. It was again something right out of the Twilight Zone. And there's my mother and I, standing there going, "What the heck is that?" And again, next day I go and ask, "Hey, I saw, I'd be over at my friend's house. I saw you going down the street. There was an alarm downtown. What happened?" "No, nothing happened. I don't know what you're talking about." That's exactly what we were told. But I was told. And again, I'm a kid, so maybe what am I not perceiving right? I just
Hmm.
remember very clearly the event, and I can remember my mother's reaction to that event, and we just didn't. We never got an explanation. It
Very
was just
weird.
bizarre, just
I
right out of a movie.
told when you
And
said
keep in mind, Lakehurst is a military town. Well, it was then. It was probably not very big back then. It's probably much bigger now. It was a military town, and who knows what the military was doing.
mm,
But these are just, yeah, a couple of strange things. Strange. And no explanation. Even when I'd ask, I wouldn't get an answer. I wouldn't get an answer. "Oh, gee, we didn't hear you calling at us. Oh, yeah, we thought, there was a fire." No explanation at all. None.
hmm. I'd
And
love to
again, that would have
hear.
been 68, 69, somewhere in there.
Right. I'd love to hear more about the experiences that went
Yeah.
on in this town.
Yeah. Strange stuff. Strangest place I think I've ever lived.
Really?
Well, besides Dugway, Utah. Do you know about Dugway?
I don't listen. You can just regale me all you want with this. Believe me.
Well, you've heard of Area 51, right?
Oh, of course. Yeah.
So Dugway is like, you can call it an Area 52. It's
Hmm.
another top secret, closed off proving ground. Now, my dad was in charge of that. In fact, right before he moved to New Jersey, he was in charge of that proving ground. He was, I don't know, chief of operations or something, and we were out there. I mean, that was like living in the X Files. We were in a very isolated part of the desert, and very, very, Men in Black, the whole thing. Okay, so yes, that stuff happens. Those people exist. These are very top secret facilities. I happened to live there as a kid. I was probably then 10, 11 years old. That's where I saw probably UFO kind of things, which I think are just experimental aircraft myself. But
Mhm.
very, very weird, creepy, spooky stuff. But you're in the middle of military shenanigans. I mean, what are you going to do?
Right.
My dad had that position, and they did a lot of. He was a test pilot, and they were messing around with biochemical warfare, among other things. And today, if you Google that, or if you look it up, Dugway, you'll see a lot of similar experiences when people try to get near the area. The men in black show up, and
Right. Right.
you better get out of here. It's very top secret stuff.
Hmm.
Of course, as a kid, all I cared about was playing with my plastic dinosaurs in the in the sand. I mean, we were in the desert, but yeah, very strange place. And and it was pretty much after that experience. It was kind of weird, I have to say, from where we were in Germany, where we lived in a haunted, I'd say a haunted building. Then we moved out to Utah. Then we moved to that house in New Jersey, and then it's just like, I don't know. Everywhere we were, weird stuff would happen until finally, when I got to college, it finally it stopped.
Hmm.
But yeah, I can't, and I don't know why. And again, I never talked about this stuff. Yeah, you understand? To talk about this stuff made you crazy. I don't know about you, because you're quite young, and if this is such a stigma about revealing or talking about these kinds of experiences.
Hmm.
How do you feel about that?
It's interesting. I think that it depends on the age group that you're talking about. I think that among older people, it does tend to
Yes.
be a very taboo subject. And with younger
Yes.
people, I find it to actually be too open a subject, to where
Well,
there is no skepticism about things like that, because a lot of
oh,
younger people, um, especially with an area like New Hampshire where there's a lot of drug abuse, um,
oh, yes.
tend to be very like, I guess anything can happen sort of thing, which isn't to discount that idea, but it's also like they'll just sort of believe anything they hear.
Right.
And it's to a point where I feel like if you can't put any credit to a field, you can't further it. But if you don't even decide to analyze the field, you can't get anywhere with
Right.
it, because then it's just some sort of arbitrary abstract concept instead of an actual study.
Well, yes, and I think this is a problem too. What do you think? How much do you think the media has to do with it? When you look at media and all the popular shows,
Hmm.
how much
Well,
do you think that has influences?
it's a strange mix. On one hand, you've got things, and this is, my opinion, like
Hmm.
finding Bigfoot, which I think probably discredited that part of the field to a fairly good extent,
Yeah.
mainly because of the fact that a lot of people that ran that show um, were, I don't want to say obsessed. I don't think that's the right word, but it's something like that. And it was basically played off for entertainment rather than actual study. Again,
Right.
where on the other end with media, you've got things like, I mean, a great example is in the 1950s when the term Bigfoot was coined.
Yes.
And instead of actually looking into it more, the media just kind of took off and was like, hey, we can make money off of this. Let's, start
Right.
pushing the idea for toys. Let's start doing this and that. When instead of, they did that instead of looking at it and being like, okay, well, is there actually a history behind this? Which there is, for one thing. Um,
Yes.
Nothing was said about the possibility of a new species or a type of great ape. Nothing like that. It was simply, how can money be made off of this?
Right.
And it's still being milked 50 years later.
Oh heck yeah! There, turn on anything on the Travel Channel or
Oh yeah.
whatever. Sci-Fi used to do it. History
Mm-hmm.
Channel does it. They are. And throw a stone, you got a Bigfoot show or a paranormal show, or the UFO shows, or
Absolutely.
they are making a lot of money, and I know it does hurt scientific endeavor. I mean, it does hurt that because of the reactions people will have, and
Mm-hmm.
what can validate. I mean, I've spent the last decade kind of investigating. I want to say that word, studying the paranormal investigative. The community, right? The paranormal community.
Yes, yes.
So people who do make it their mission to go find ghosts, or I haven't really worked with cryptid people, but people who are out there, spending a ton of money on equipment and going to divorce court, really,
Mm-hmm.
just for the sake of we're gonna get us some ghosts, we're gonna get us evidence, and and what I find is, to be honest, and I think most of them, like you say, are they're driven. Okay, I don't know if you want to say they're obsessed, but they're driven by it. Many are very devoted to it, determined. Let's see the 3Ds. So they're very determined. And many of the groups, I say, well, good for you. You're going out there. You're trying to use technology to capture evidence, which, I think should be cataloged and put into some vast library somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
But what I'm amazed at, and I don't know if this is the case with the cryptid culture, but I don't find that there's any particular unity in the paranormal community. They are at odds with each other. And it's sort of like, they're very territorial. And, well, it's my evidence, and, I can't have you checking it out. That's just what I've encountered.
Yeah, there's a strange thing in the cryptozoology field where what I would say is that you have divisions and subdivisions that all have these different unities. Another Bigfoot example would be what's called the Woo community in the Bigfoot field. And the Woo community kind of stands behind the spiritual aspect of Sasquatch, looking at them as entities rather than organisms or anything biological or even physical. And I have noticed in cryptozoology quite a bit that there's a strange conflict between the willingness and practicality of sharing findings and the ownership of findings.
Yes.
And I'm someone who kind of tends to be like, as long as you don't lie about my findings, I don't care how you present them. Or that you present them, I should say. Because I would very much like, if I found something that I believed was significant, for that to be shared. Because this field isn't about me, it's about the field itself. This research isn't for me, it's for the subject. But there are people who really don't want their evidence shared. There are some people who won't share, and of course these people could obviously just be lying and using this as a scapegoat, who wouldn't share their photographs or videos unless there was some kind of watermark or they got paid for it or something. Right. Which, hey, maybe to some extent I can understand. Maybe I don't have the right mindset for that. But it's definitely something that I've noticed where some people value ownership of evidence far more than the sharing of evidence.
And this is sadly, as much as people would want to bicker, but in the realm of science, the hard sciences, when you've got somebody who's got that discovery, the competitiveness.
Oh, yes.
It happens in physics. It happens in medicine. It takes a while for some of these theories and findings to be shared and to be, tested again.
Right.
But when you're trying to present your papers and all that, it becomes very competitive. It's almost like I don't even know what to call it. And there's a lot of bullying that goes on, intimidating, and a lot of ego. A lot of ego is on the line.
Yes.
So as much as people want to mock, even the scientists want to mock people who are doing cryptozoology or paranormal investigation or parapsychology, let's say, they want to dismiss that. That's not real science. It is real science. If you're following empirical method, you're trying to use the same, methodology to do your conduct experiments
Mm-hmm.
and find evidence of whatever it is. Um, that's the same method as any other scientist uses
Right.
with their instruments. It just, you're or these people are in a realm that isn't considered to be real. But then you think of all the guys way back, hundreds of years ago, who came up with, oh, air is composed of all these different gases. Who came up with that? How did they determine,
Mm.
stuff that we take for granted? You think of the minds that came up before you had the Hubble telescope, long before. Oh, we understand what an elliptical orbit is, and today you just say, oh, well, that's just because they observed this, and this. Yes, they observed what was going on in their environment and in the cosmos. Well, you think people who aren't encountering Sasquatch aren't observing something in their environment, or haunted houses, whatever. They're not being something is not being observed in that environment.
Mm-hmm.
Um, to me, it's no different. I just and I don't know. When you think of our age of reason and scientific thought and scientific method, you have some very credible scientists out there exploring these unknowns, whether it's UFOs or Bigfoot or whatever, the Oran Pendek. They're out
Right.
there like any naturalist biologist would be. They're out there gathering story. They're out there trying to find the evidence, just like any early scientist did for any other creature or event.
Mm-hmm.
It to me. It's what's the difference? It's a belief system. It's
Right.
it's just about a belief system. So I don't know. I mean, and I'm an anthropologist, so we're soft scientists. We don't. The hard scientists laugh at us too. I mean, you can't really study human behavior scientifically. Well, I can go back and cite you all kinds of names and of great thinkers who beg to differ. And the fact the social sciences are probably the hardest sciences to um, to do, because we have too many variables. We
Mm-hmm.
have no control over. But we do know that there are predictable patterns, that there are regular routines, and that these stories are consistent over eons of time. They're consistent.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know how much you research Native American belief systems, and of course, if you look at the variations of Sasquatch, that or even the what do they call them, pugwudgies? The little
Oh,
thing.
yes, yes. I had almost forgotten about those actually.
Yes, and that's in Native folklore out here.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, this house in Sabatis may have had some pugwudgie sightings as well.
Interesting.
So, but yeah, why would they, come up with that? And again, it's, oh, well, they didn't understand it was a bear. I'm like, are you kidding me? These are people who lived in the forests for tens of thousands of years. You
Mm-hmm.
think they know their fauna, and if there was something that just didn't fit the bill, and it was caught them, not just one account, but several. There's something going on. That's all I can say.
I
There's
agree
something.
with that actually. I would definitely disagree that,
Yeah.
especially like you said with native sightings, that it's misidentification because they're, or at least they
Right.
were a civilization that was so incredibly close to the forest.
Yes.
That isn't to rule out mythology or whatever you may have there.
Right.
But there's certainly a an amount of things, especially when I look at again the history of the Sasquatch, for instance, in Native American
Yes.
legend, that
Right.
really seems to point to something a bit more. One thing that a lot of people pointed out is things like the Zonaqua, which has like this,
Mm.
these wooden masks that are made for it. And
Yes.
you can ask someone who knows about these masks who's in this tribe, is that a human? Oh, no, it's a Zonaqua. Well, it looks like an ape. Well, yeah, but it's not a
Right.
human, it's a Zonaqua. Well, how on earth would you know what an ape looks like?
Right. Because
That's a
you've
very
never lived in
strange
a
thing to come across.
right. The people never lived in a part of the world where apes were indigenous,
Right.
and so that's coming from somewhere.
Exactly.
You know. And then again, anybody's guess. And then I would, as an anthropologist, I would listen to those people and that group and their elders, and I'd want to read, more if any, how much of their folklore was recorded throughout history to see if how much the story had changed or not.
Mm-hmm.
But then to hear what they think it is and what their interpretation of it is.
Right.
And of course, if they are creating effigies of it or whatever, then there's something there.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, granted, human imagination is fantastic, but when you find very similar patterns throughout various cultures that have had no contact, I mean, there's no diffusion, there's no question of that. They're miles and thousands of miles apart, or linguistically and culturally very, very disparate, and yet they're coming up with the same notion of this human type creature, but isn't human.
Right.
So I don't know. It's fascinating stuff, and I mean, granted, I'm more focused on the ghostly spirit world, but again, I have to deal with belief systems, local histories. What's the history of the land? Like right now, I'm studying a little bit about the Abenaki tribes that lived up there in the Androscoggin Valley. So I'm trying to understand more about how they moved, and but even before, what's documented of them, even from the first encounters with Europeans. But Europeans pretty much, when they moved into that area, the natives had kind of moved off. That would be the tendency. But what did they do, and what did they embrace, and what did they believe in before they got contaminated by Christianity and
right.
colonization,
Mm-hmm.
colonialization. But yeah, the folklore is very important to research and understand. And I think you and Nate, are you working on him with him on the film he's trying to do?
Yes, and he's working with me a bit on mine as well.
Okay, you both are doing your own.
Yes, we are
Film.
independently, but we kind of cross over into each other at some points.
Right. And then what's the nature of the nature of your films? Are they the same? Is it the same, or?
It's fairly much the same premise. Nate's is definitely a focus on the history of the Sasquatch in Maine, and sightings and things like that.
Right.
Whereas mine is sort of a chronicle of not just my own, I guess you could call them expeditions,
Okay.
but also in a more wide variety. So I plan to go to like 4 or 5 states within New England. So a sort of New England Sasquatch as a whole.
Okay. And so, are you going to places where it's been reported?
The only place for one thing, yes. The only place I've been to so far is a neighboring town of mine that I grew up in, and
Where's that?
that is in Greenfield, New Hampshire. And I grew up in Lineborough, New Hampshire, which is
Okay.
less than 5 miles from Greenfield.
Right.
And growing up in Lineborough, I had some very strange experiences. I've
Ooh.
talked about them very briefly on my channel, and I intend to do more.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to give anything away, obviously, but
Yeah, I get you.
we have some very strange things happen to us in Greenfield, for sure.
Well, just like Nate had happened up at his camp.
Yes, he and I are going. That's the part in Maine that I
Yeah.
plan to go to, is the
Yeah.
cabin.
Right, because they caught something very weird. It was Blair Witchy kind of weird, that they have no explanation for, and I don't know. I mean, yeah, I could sit and argue, well, somebody got in there with a bunch of ropes and did that to the trees, but I don't think so,
Yeah, it would be strange too when you don't. You'd have to know somebody is going up there. That's one thing that I find weird about a lot of things that are found out in the middle of nowhere. It's like, okay, you're telling me someone just magically knew this team
Right.
was coming here and decided to prank them less than
Right.
24 hours before they got there.
Right, right. I don't know. I mean, I'm not saying that there can't be weird people moving through the forest doing strange things. People are weird. I mean, crop circles. Some of them
Yeah,
are man-made.
that's
Some
true.
of them I don't think are. I don't know what they're made out of. Most of them probably are man-made, but it's when you look at something as complex. I mean, that's really labor-intensive work.
Yeah, it is, and to get no gain from it really, because if your
Right.
intention is a hoax, you're intending for nobody to ever know your name.
And not only that, it's way up in the middle of nowhere. Who goes up there? You know?
Right, right.
And it just was too odd, But again, you want to think as logically as you can about it, but it's very strange. It took him by surprise, and his friends, and I'm glad they documented it.
I am
Boy,
too.
I
They
wish I
actually
had
made it
this
onto a local radio website.
Yeah, I mean, boy, I wish I had this technology when I was a kid. But I had things running all the time. I mean, I didn't. I mean, you could have an Instamatic camera or something, but even if there was something in our photographs, I don't have them anymore because when
Right.
we left New Jersey, we lost everything. We lost everything. So I got no evidence of any, and that's the sad thing. I mean, these are great stories, and I wished, boy, if I could find any photo, any whatever that could be a trace. I don't know.
Right.
Because I wonder if we didn't go out and take pictures of the house that day. My dad had lots of cameras. He was a photographer. He was he was a pretty good photographer. It was his hobby, but he had some pretty nice cameras, and there might have been. I don't remember that, but we don't have anything. But you're lucky. You have a lot of technology ready at your hand, and if you can capture. I mean, have you captured anything on? Or you've seen evidence of stuff?
Yes, I have unfortunately only one piece of evidence from Lineborough.
Okay.
There was a photograph at one point, and I was afraid to tell my parents, and it ended up on my dad's hard drive, and the hard drive broke at some point.
Oh no!
Yeah,
The only copy?
The only copy of it, yes. Unfortunately, it wasn't a very clear photograph. I do remember that, so I'm not sure how worth it would have been keeping it.
Yeah.
As for Greenfield, we have two pieces of evidence from Greenfield. One in the form of a photograph, and one, well, video and a photograph,
Right.
of a certain scene, and one that is possible audio. It's not exactly attributed to anything except there's something definitely alive in the audio.
Okay.
Again, I don't want to give too much away because I do plan to,
Right.
upload this at some point.
Don't worry about it. It's
But yeah, it was a
fine.
very interesting, and all that happened basically within the first day and night. Mostly because it rained profusely the next 2 days.
Oh boy,
So
that gets rid of evidence, doesn't it?
yeah, well, we weren't gonna find anything that was audio wise, definitely, and so the closest thing we've gotten is maybe something on video, but it gets so dark around there that once the nighttime picks up, you're basically done.
Okay.
It was very
Yeah,
interesting, though.
No, I'm just wondering too. I mean, with both you guys doing this and you're sharing whatever. I mean, what are you planning to do? What are you trying? He's trying to show the history, right?
Something like that. Yeah, that's at least a big part of it for him.
Because I'm just wondering when you guys finish your products, are you going to put them? Where are you going to put them? I mean, how are you posting?
I may just post mine to my YouTube channel because with Nate and I's book coming out this year,
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
You guys working on the what is it? The cryptid hoax?
Crypthoaxology, yeah.
Yes, I like that.
Thank you.
Yes.
I think Nate came up with that title.
That's great.
Yeah, it is. It's been really great writing it, and especially Nate's doing the art for it.
Yeah,
And,
I saw that.
oh,
So you've been doing a lot of research on that one.
He has been a brilliant artist, totally.
Yes, I know. He's good.
He is.
He's very talented, I'll tell you. Yeah.
He is.
I wish I could get him in on some projects. I'm trying to, but
Well, he is a really busy guy. It's been a few months since I've been able to see him in person because of the schedules.
Right.
Leading into what you're talking about with where you want to like get him on investigations and things like that.
Yes.
I do want to ask you, even though this is a cryptozoology oriented podcast, I feel we've covered a lot of that right now. And seeing as how I'm interviewing you, I want to talk a little bit at least about your more paranormal experiences.
Right. Well, I've had far more of those than I've had anything to do with cryptids. I don't know why either. I've lived in places that have a lot of activity, and not there was quite a long spell in my life, maybe a couple of decades where nothing, and it was later. I think when I lived in Korea, I moved into a place and there was some weird activity in there, and I found out that a shaman had been living in that residence before me, a Korean shaman. So I found out then I was living in a whole neighborhood of shamans. They were all shamans, and so my Korean friend helped me, and I went and hung out with them and got to interview and talk to them, and said, "Well, there's something going on in my house," and they just didn't react like, "Oh my gosh." They were like, "Oh, here's what you can do to make it a happy ghost." Nobody reacted like it was something weird or strange or Amityville or anything like that.
Right.
Because you're living in a culture where, in many cultures in Asia, they look at the spirit world and the physical world as we're just separated by a thin wall.
Right.
And
right.
the spirit world will come over and, mess with us sometimes. And not that it's bad. I mean, yes, they have their evil spirits, and they have. I did an article some years ago for a publication, Fearsome Female Phantoms, because a lot of ghosts in Korean and Japanese culture are females,
Right.
the bad ones. But they don't make a big deal out of, I guess the ghost realm. Many societies are like that, and then some make a really big deal. Like in Africa, anything that was a ghost was deemed demonic. It was automatically bad, and there were haunted rivers and haunted locations in where I lived in West Africa, and in many of the Muslim societies living, you don't talk about it at all. It's very taboo, but they do believe in the jinn, and they have their own versions of ghosts, but ghosts are not a good thing. They're always looked at as demonic, bad, nasty. Stay away from them. Native American societies, depending who you talk to, pretty much everyone I've talked to, again, it's just they're there. They're in the room with you. You don't. There are some bad entities. There are some bad spirits, but you can have your beloved ancestors hanging around. They don't. It's not a creepy, spooky thing.
Right.
But they do have their own spirit. There are different aspects to the spirit world. All I can say is I've had experiences. Sadly, though, I never had equipment. I never recorded most of the experiences. I always had witnesses. I still have some friends who talk about some of the activity to this day, but I never recorded it. A lot of it happened when I was really young. And as I got older as well, I just never thought about, whip out a camera right now. It was more like, how am I going to deal with this? And what is it, and how am I going to deal with it? That was always my way of thinking. And then it was when I came to Maine, and I came to Maine in 2006. And in 2007, I was working on a kind of a TV show for a local station up here. We called it Strange Attractors, and it was for Halloween. And it's on, some version of it is on YouTube somewhere. But we went down to a haunted attraction in Nashua, New Hampshire, and we went down to Salem, and we interviewed vampires. I mean, practicing vampires. These guys are cool. I used to come to my class, and when I taught at Tufts University. And so we produced this kind of little travel channel type show of, here's this haunted attraction, here's this vampire, here are these street magicians in Salem. And, we were featuring that. And then there was a couple of ghost hunters. There were 3 women. 2 of them were married. That was kind of interesting in the day. And they had something called Ghost Quest. So we did a pilot show with them. We did 2 pilot shows. One was called Ghost Quest, and the other was called Supernatural Hotspots. And Ghost Quest got aired, but, didn't get picked up because I think there was no interest in an all-female team of ghost hunters, especially 2 of them being in a same-sex relationship, and these were not glamour girls, okay? Sadly, the formula for ghost hunting shows is very male dominant, and any woman in there is she's got to bring sex appeal, and that's the truth of it.
Mm-hmm.
I was trying to break that mold, but there was absolutely no interest in it. But we did do another show with two of them. One of them left the group, so we had the two left. We had an idea of, well, let's bring them to a place they don't know anything about it. They'll come to our studio, they'll meet us, we will take them to the haunted place and let them go to work. So they were supposed to come in with no knowledge of anything.
Right.
Cold. That was our plan, and we did everything we could to control that. That doesn't mean that some bonehead on my crew couldn't have leaked something to them. Who knows? You just don't know. But
right.
I had lots of trouble with crew. Let me tell you, I had trouble with the investigators too. But we did do an investigation at a place in Portland called the Empire Dine and Dance. It's now just called the Empire.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's a Chinese restaurant. And back then in 2010, we did this. It was no longer a Chinese. It was not Chinese, but the building had been the Chinese American Center for about 50 years or 54 years.
Oh, wow.
1900 to 1954, it was a Chinese American Center, and it was a Chinese restaurant. And then it went off and had other incarnations. The building became another bar, and it became a bank for a while, and then it went back to being a bar restaurant, and then it's back to being a Chinese restaurant and a music performance stage. They have on the second floor they have a stage, and down on the first, Chinese restaurant. But I had got a call from, actually one of my camera guys said, "Laurie, we got to investigate this place." And I said, "Why?" And he showed me some video that one of the owner or the managers had caught on his cell phone of curtains just moving, opening and closing. And again, we did get that footage. We didn't capture any of that activity while we were there, but we got his footage. And we went and did an overnight investigation with this gay couple. And it was an interesting night, and for me, it was a very interesting night because for me, I'm just going to be honest, it was a miserable night. There was nothing but fighting going on with my crew and me and this producer from hell. And I tell you, I went off to the creepy basement with a tech person who had the EMF reader, or one of those, gizmos, electromagnetic field. We went to the most disturbed part of the building. And I went with her alone, and we let everybody do their thing on the other parts of the building. And I went into the room and started trying to analyze what's going on in this particular corner of the basement. It was a room that was part of the old tunnel system that runs under Portland. Mm-hmm. And of course, that was for moving Underground Railroad, the slaves. It was also for moving illegal liquor during Prohibition. Right. A lot of history. Most of those tunnels are closed off. So this room was part of that, but the tunnels are closed off. That room was a little off kilter. You could tell the age of the building and everything. Things were starting to settle funny. There was all their electrical equipment was in there, the junction boxes, so that meant high EMF, Then it was full of crates and things, and I'm the only one who could squeeze in there. I mean, the other person couldn't even get in. And it was dark and tight and claustrophobic, and I'm trying to explain on an audio recorder. We did not have a camera because the cameras are being used upstairs. On the audio recorder, I'm trying to explain what a fear cage is. I don't know if you've heard that expression. Have you?
I've not, actually. What is that?
So fear cage is something in the paranormal realm where they're trying to debunk a lot of people's perceptions by saying you're feeling nervous and you're maybe having mild hallucinations because you're in a small space that's kind of off tilt. It's a funhouse effect. You're disoriented. And if you have a lot of electrical wiring and things going on, it's going to mess with the brain. Right. So it's a way of them trying to debunk areas of a house or a building where people are feeling someone's watching them, and there's a paranoid feeling. Mm-hmm. I'm in the middle of explaining this. Well, no wonder people feel weird, because this room is very small, it's dark, it's tight, it's off kill, it's settling funny, it's a little off kilter. We got a lot of wiring in here. It will give you that feeling. And and somewhere in the recording you can hear me say, "Oh, like that. That's weird." Because at that point, I remember getting a weird tingling sensation, like electrical moving through my body. And again, it's just on the audio. And I said, "Oh, that's weird," and something. And I said something about that's something weird and frustrated. I don't know. There were a couple of terms I was using. You feel frustrated or something. And I didn't think anything of it. I just thought, "Oh, I'm getting this weird feeling because I'm in all this electrical equipment and high EMF, and it's just natural. It's an electrical, not a surge, but kind of an encounter with extra electromagnetic feed or runoff from the boxes." And that was it. And then we left and went back upstairs, and I pretty much stayed out of the production the whole night, to be honest. There was one other point where I was down in the same basement, and we were videoing a K2 meter because they were using one of my cameras. And so that was a very weird thing too that happened there. Both the things we caught were in the basement of this place. Always the basement, isn't it?
It is always. It seems to be.
Always the basement.
Well,
I didn't think anything of it. We went back, brought everything. Dawn is coming, and we're done. Thank you, everybody. Go home. And my attitude is I never want to see or work with you guys again because it was very stressful. But it was a couple of days later. I'm sitting in my office because I used to have a production studio in Portland, and I'm sitting in my office. I have 5 people hanging out there. They had nothing to do with the project. They just like, "Hey, Laurie, what are you doing?" "Oh, I'm listening to all the audio." I was listening to all the audio files while we had somebody else looking at the video, right? And audio files in paranormal, I mean, that's like listening to the water run.
Pretty much, yeah.
And listen, it's just boring and
no,
awful.
Believe me, after having to script through the audio from Greenfield, that's exactly what it's like.
Yeah, exactly. So you would do the same thing when you're trying to hear, is there a Bigfoot out there? You're listening to nothing, So I would hear noises in the building. I could hear maybe a little bit of, but no, actually not in that part of the building. Other places where I'd recorded, we could hear some outside traffic. I could hear, no, you really couldn't hear anybody from the upper floors. I do remember that. Once we got into that room, there wasn't any of that external noise. I do remember how quiet that room was. But it was at that point where I'm going yama, 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 yama about fear cage. And at the point where I'm like, "Oh, like that's weird." And I'm not joking. As clear as day, here comes this voice that just undercuts mine. It just comes below. I can't even explain it. You didn't hear anything with the naked ear, but I heard this right at that point where I said, "That's weird." There, it clear as day said, "I am here." I mean, everybody in my office jumped off their chairs.
That's another thing. It's always a whisper, isn't it?
That was a distinct whisper.
Right.
And it was like, "What the hell was that?" And I'm like, "I don't know." Every hair on my arm went, I never heard it when I was there. And then the person who was doing the tech stuff, I'm like, "Is she a ventriloquist? What's going on?"
Right.
But I had it analyzed by an audio engineer, a very well-trained and a very skeptical audio engineer. And the audio engineer said she could not explain where it came from. She measured it at 16 hertz. Human voice can only go as low as 20 hertz.
I was about to say, that's well below human range.
And it's well below your natural hearing range. I wouldn't hear it. Maybe a dog would have heard it, but I heard nothing. The tech person heard nothing. We heard nothing with the naked ear. We didn't think anything of it. It was on playback. And there was at that moment, and there was another moment where I had my audio recorder sitting on the bar while we were getting ready. I just kept my audio running a lot, I just would leave it running. And we did pick up another very distinct message that said, "Turn off the faucet." turn off the faucet. And I have no idea what the heck does that mean. The guys who owned the bar said, "We didn't tell you somebody left the tap on the night before and flooded the basement." We had to really scramble to clean it up before you guys showed up.
Interesting.
We didn't know. But I'm just saying that video is on YouTube. I think I called it Ghosts of Portland or Ghosts of Portland, Maine. You can look at it. It's very short. I think it was our demo reel. It was like our pilot demo.
Right,
but
right.
You can see, and we also caught some very strange video evidence that I have never seen captured. I think it would set a precedent. I've never seen anything like it on any other paranormal show.
Are you able to describe that for us?
Well, yeah, so you have your video camera set up and running, right? And so if you have your video camera, you have your video camera screen open so you can kind of see that you've got everything in frame, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we were filming. The two investigators were trying to talk to the spirit, and we had what they call the K2 meter. Do you know what that is?
Roughly.
So that's a device that electricians use to find electrical wiring in the walls before they bang into a wall. Mm-hmm. They don't want to get electrocuted, right? So it's a little rectangular box type thing, about as big as your hand, and it has a series of lights at the top that go from green to orange. They go from green, yellow, orange. So where you have more electrical activity, electromagnetic activity, the more orange the range gets. Mm. Well, we had the K2 meter sitting on a stool, so we couldn't say any human interference was going on, right?
Right.
And they're talking to the spirit, tell us, are you here, blah, blah, blah. Now, the funny thing was, to the naked eye, the K2 lights never changed, but on the video monitor, those K2 lights were lighting up all over the place.
That is very odd.
That is very odd. I have no explanation. I was there. I witnessed that.
I've never heard of that before. Not once.
I have no explanation.
Huh.
Yeah. Naked eye, we saw one thing. Video showed another.
Right.
So on the video, you see the lights shifting, but you'll hear one of the investigators say, look at that. It's shifting in the video screen. It's doing nothing as we're looking at it, but we can't show you what it looked like to us looking at it.
Right,
because that was just the naked eye. Another camera would I don't know what another camera would have shown. We only had one camera running on it. So yeah, you can see that. It's a very short piece, and it's on YouTube, and Ghosts of Portland, Maine, and anybody can get on. I think it's on my YouTube channel. I have a channel called Idea Gems, IDEHEEMS, and I think it's on there. But I have a lot of video of all kinds of crazy things. So there's nothing very organized about my work.
Right.
You can see the Bigfoot guy too on there.
Oh, all right.
I'm really curious about what you and Nate are doing, and I encourage it highly. I know Nate. He interviewed me for his project.
That's how I was introduced to you, actually. Is he showed me that segment.
Right. What does an anthropologist think of Bigfoot? But yeah, and if you have I know I'm on your Facebook page, but do you have a YouTube, another channel that you use, or?
I do. I have a channel called Crash Course Cryptozoology.
Okay, I think that's an actual website, right?
Yes, it's my YouTube page. I am actually also working on a separate website for Nate and I's Facebook group.
Okay, so that's my question. I mean, is this just being done through YouTube and Facebook, or do you guys have your own URL, or?
My side of things is mainly being done through YouTube.
Okay.
I don't post to Facebook that much. Nate's actually kind of a flip of that. He has his own channel where he's making a lot more videos recently, but mainly his stuff is posting on Facebook right now. Okay,
so all right, well, I'll try, and I'm going to do my best to follow what both of you guys are doing.
Thank you very much.
And I mean, I'm hoping to get Nate involved in. I know he's busy, and this house in Sabattis. Let me tell you, there have been, I believe, a puckwudgie. I swore I saw something. I was up there. It's on swampland, across from the lake, and lots of people think there's a lot of stuff coming out of the woods. Little short figures and stuff. I just posted one picture of her security camera. I posted something on a couple of paranormal sites to see, well, what do you think this is? But yeah, I saw something up there with the naked eye. I can't tell you, but I knew it was not like a bear or a cat, or it was nothing like that.
Interesting.
So there's activity up there, and even for a cryptid, maybe there's a puckwudgie. I don't know.
Right.
It'd be interesting to find out. But I'm all for doing the research.
Are we all? Hopefully we all are.
Yep.
To sort of end this off, what do you see as the future for you in these fields?
For me?
Yeah, what's next for you?
Oh gosh. Well, I'm trying to get this paranormal project. I would like to produce a documentary just based on somewhat of the actual activities, but more of the people. I really want to focus on understanding the people, and either the people who have the encounters and have the belief system. Again, making it their life mission to explore this and to come up with evidence. I've written pieces to it. I've had a couple of published pieces on it. I would just love to see some sort of film documentary come out of it. So I'm trying to do that, but that's not so easy to do when you got a day job, and there's a lot to it, and it can take years and years. And I'm hoping not too many years, because I don't know how much longer I'm going to last. But we don't know. But yeah, I'm fascinated with all this, and I'm hoping between what you guys are doing, and you're young and moving forward, I'm hoping in your lifetime you'll get some understanding of this stuff, and that would be pretty cool.
Definitely would be.
Yes. But thank you for this. This was a nice opportunity.
It's been a great pleasure to have you on. Seriously, I think you're the most interesting guest that I've had on in a little while.
Oh, goodness. All right. Keep me posted.
I will. Take care.
All right. Bye-bye.